Marcus stood in the control room deep inside the mountain. The walls were made of metal and glass, filled with screens showing stars and planets far away. He had been watching these screens for 20 years, just like his father before him, and his grandfather before that. For 300 years, humans had been doing the same thing, watching and waiting. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Other people sat at desks, looking at different screens, typing notes, and drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. They all worked for the Terran observation corps, but nobody outside this mountain knew they existed. The world above thought Earth was alone in the universe. They had no idea that their planet was surrounded by alien ships, alien wars, and alien empires that could destroy them in minutes. Marcus walked to the main screen where Davis sat. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been working for 16 hours straight, watching the same area of space where the Corvani Empire was moving their ships closer to Earth. "Show me the latest reports," Marcus said. Davis touched her screen, and numbers appeared. "The Corvani have taken over 3 more planets this month. They're building new bases and putting more ships in space. Their closest base is now only 50 light-years away from us." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. 50 light-years was nothing to ships that could travel faster than light. The Corvani could reach Earth in days if they wanted to, but they didn't know Earth was worth visiting. Thought it was just another dead planet that had destroyed itself with nuclear weapons decades ago? "What about the others?" Marcus asked. "The Thulan Empire is fighting a war near the center of the galaxy. They're losing badly. The Rilla Confederacy is building more ships and taking over empty systems. And the Zephyrian Union is staying neutral." "Like always," Marcus nodded. He had heard these names thousands of times over the years. The galaxy was full of different alien species, all fighting each other for planets, resources, and power. Some were peaceful traders. Others were violent conquerors.
Ow.
Most were somewhere in between, doing whatever they needed to survive. Earth had been watching them all. Hidden stations throughout the solar system sent tiny robots to spy on alien ships. These robots were so small and quiet that no alien had ever found one. Recorded everything, how alien weapons worked, how their ships moved, what languages they spoke, even how they thought and made decisions. The information came back too. Places like this mountain where humans studied it and learned. They learned how to build better weapons, faster ships, and stronger defenses. But they never used any of it. They just watched and prepared and waited. "Why do we keep doing this?" Davis asked suddenly. "We could have stopped so many wars. Could have saved millions of lives. We have better technology than any of them now. Why don't we help?" Marcus had heard this question before. Every person who worked in the observation corps asked it eventually. The answer was always the same, but it never felt good to say it. "Because we're not ready," he said. "We have better technology, yes, but we're just one planet. The Corvani Empire has 1,000 planets. The Thulan Empire has 500. Even if we could win a war against one of them, the others would unite against us. We'd be destroyed." "But people are dying out there," Davis said. "Entire species are being enslaved, or wiped out. And if we reveal ourselves too early, our species will be next," Marcus replied. "Our job is to keep Earth safe. Everything else comes after that." It was a cold way to think, but it was the truth. The aliens in the galaxy saw new species as either useful slaves or dangerous threats.
There
was no middle ground. Earth had to be strong enough to protect itself before it could help anyone else. Marcus looked at the big screen that showed the whole galaxy. Red dots marked the Corvani Empire. Blue dots marked the Thulan Empire. Green dots marked the Rilla Confederacy. And in one tiny corner, almost too small to see, was a yellow dot, marking Earth. The aliens had no idea what that yellow dot really was. They thought it was just another failed civilization that had gone quiet after inventing nuclear weapons. Radio signals from Earth had stopped in the 1990s, not because humans had destroyed themselves, but because they had learned to hide. Every signal going out from Earth was carefully controlled. Every satellite was designed to look old and broken. Every sign of advanced technology was hidden underground or in space stations that looked like asteroids. The deception had worked. For 300 years, but Marcus knew it couldn't work forever. Sooner or later, some alien would get curious about the Sol system. They would send a probe, then a ship, then a fleet. And when that happened, Earth would have to make a choice. Sir called out another worker from across the room. We're getting reports from the edge of the system. Something's coming. Marcus felt his heart start beating faster. What kind of something? Small ship, probably a probe. It's heading toward the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Computer says it's Corvani. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. After 300 years of hiding, someone had finally come to look at Earth's solar system. It was what they had always known. Would happen eventually, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. How long until it reaches the inner system? He asked. 2 days? Maybe 3? Marcus opened his eyes and looked around the room. Everyone was staring at him, waiting for orders. These people had spent their lives watching and learning, preparing. For this moment, now it was here.
Oh.
Send a message to Central Command, he said. Tell them we have a visitor. Then wake up everyone else. We're going to need all hands for this. As the workers started making calls and sending messages, Marcus looked back at the screen showing the Corvani probe heading toward Earth. It was just a small dot moving slowly across the dark screen, but it represented the end of everything. Earth had been doing for 3 centuries. The time for watching was almost over. Soon, humanity would have to decide what came next. And whatever they chose, the galaxy would never be the same again. Marcus had always wondered what would finally force Earth to reveal itself. He had imagined many different scenarios over the years, but he had never thought it would start with something so simple. Just one curious alien. Probe, looking for scrap metal in an asteroid belt. Sometimes the biggest changes in history began with the smallest steps, and this small step was about to change everything. Commander Vrock stretched his forearms and yawned, showing teeth that could bite through steel. The bridge of his ship was quiet and boring, just like the past 6 months had been. His crew was scanning another empty system for minerals and old technology, hoping to find something valuable they could take back to the Corvani Empire. The Corvani looked like giant insects, walking on 2 legs. They had hard shells instead of skin, big black eyes, and sharp claws on their hands. Most other species in the galaxy were afraid of them, which was exactly how the Corvani liked it. Fear made conquest easier. Commander called out Brix, his sensor operator. I'm detecting something interesting around the 3rd planet in this system. Vrack walked over to look at Brix's screen. The planet was blue and green with white clouds, clearly capable of supporting life. Around it were hundreds of metal objects floating in space, satellites, space stations, and what looked like the remains of old ships. Scan deeper, Vrack ordered. What happened here? Brix worked at his controls for several minutes. The planet shows signs of nuclear weapons being used about 60 years ago. The radio signals stopped around the same time. It looks like another species that destroyed itself. Vrack nodded. It was a common story in the galaxy. Species would develop nuclear weapons, then use them in a war that killed everyone. The Corvani had seen it dozens of times before. But the metal debris in orbit meant there might be valuable technology to salvage. Begin detailed scans of all artificial objects, he said. If there's anything worth taking, we'll mark this system for a full expedition. What Vrock didn't know was that every scan his ship made was being watched. Deep under the mountains of Earth, alarms were ringing in control rooms that had been quiet for centuries. The Corvani probe had found them. Marcus stood in the main command center, surrounded by screens showing the alien ship. Other humans were running between computers, checking weapons and making phone calls to hidden bases around the world. After 300 years of secret preparation, the moment they had all feared was finally here. How much do they see? Marcus asked Davis, who was working at 3 different computers at once. They're scanning our old satellites and the International Space Station. Everything we left up there to look like we're a dead civilization, so far they're buying it. In our real installations, hidden. The stealth systems are working perfectly. They can't see any of our real bases or ships. Marcus felt a little relief, but not much. The Corvani probe would go back to its empire and report what it found. Then more ships would come, bigger ships with more sensors and more crew. It would be impossible to hide from a full investigation. His phone rang.
It's
The head of Earth's real military. Marcus, I need your assessment. How long do we have? The probe will finish its scans in 2 days. It will take maybe a week to get back to Corvani space. Then they'll need time to organize an expedition. I'd say we have 2 months, maybe 3. That's what I thought too. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Terran Council. We need to make some big decisions. Marcus had never been to a Terran Council meeting, but he knew what they would be. Discussing. For 300 years, Earth had 3 possible plans for when this day came. The first was to run, evacuate. Everyone to the hidden colonies in the outer solar system and let the Corvani think Earth was empty. The second was to hide better, use advanced technology to make Earth completely invisible, and hope the aliens would go away. The third was to fight, reveal humanity's real capabilities, and defend the planet. All 3 plans had problems. Running meant giving up Earth forever. Hiding might not work against a determined search. Fighting meant war against an empire with 1,000 planets. 2 days later, the Corvani probe finished its scans and left the solar system. Marcus watched it go on his screens, knowing that it carried information that would change everything. In a few months, the Corvani would return in force. The Terran Council met in a bunker, so deep underground that it was closer to the center of the Earth than to the surface. The most powerful people on the planet sat around a table making a decision that would affect every human alive. Admiral Torres stood at the head of the table. She was an old woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. Behind her was a screen showing the Corvani Empire, thousands of red dots spread across hundreds of light years of space. The situation is simple, she said. The Corvani know we exist. They think we're a dead civilization with some useful scrap metal. They'll be back to claim our planet and everything on it. We have to decide how to respond. General Hayes, who was even older than Torres, spoke first. We should evacuate. Move everyone to the colonies around Jupiter and Saturn. Let the Corvani have Earth. We can build new worlds out there. President Martinez shook her head. 16 billion people live on Earth. We can't move them all in 3 months. And even if we could, the Corvani would eventually find our colonies too. Then we hide better, suggested Dr. Kim from the Science Division. We have stealth technology that can make the entire planet invisible. We could wait until they leave. For how long? Asked Minister Roberts. What happens when the next alien probe comes looking? You can't hide forever. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to contact the Galactic Federation and ask for protection. Others suggested revealing themselves to friendly alien species and asking for help. A few even proposed surrendering immediately and accepting Corvani rule. But General Hayes had a different idea. We've been watching them for 300 years, he said quietly. We know their weaknesses. We know their technology. We know their tactics and their politics. We've built weapons they can't imagine and defenses they can't break. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. You're talking about war, President Martinez said. I'm talking about showing them what humans really are, Hayes replied. The Corvani think we're dead. The galaxy thinks we're primitive. They've all been wrong for 3 centuries. Maybe it's time to teach them the truth. Admiral Torres looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leaders. If we fight, we win or we die. There won't be a second chance. There won't be a second chance anyway, Hayes said. The Corvani don't keep slaves. They either use a species or eliminate it. If we surrender, they'll work us to death in their minds. If we run, they'll hunt us down eventually. This might be our only real choice. The vote wasn't even close. 18 leaders voted to fight. Only 3 voted to hide or run. Marcus learned about the decision when Admiral Torres called him the next day. We're going to let them come, she said. We're going to let them land and occupy Earth. We're going to let them think they've won. And then we're going to show them what a mistake that was. You want us to pretend to surrender? I want you to help us put on the greatest performance in human history. The Corvani are expecting to find a weak, scared species that will obey them. That's exactly what we're going to give them, until the moment we don't. Marcus understood. It was the most dangerous plan possible, but it might be the only one that would work. Instead of meeting the Corvani in space, where their numbers would matter, Earth would let them land and spread out. Then humanity would hit them all at once, using weapons and tactics the aliens had never seen before. It was a huge risk. If anything went wrong, Earth would be destroyed. But if it worked, the galaxy would learn that humanity was not what it seemed to be. The Corvani were coming. Earth was ready to give them exactly what they expected to find, right up until the moment it gave them something completely different. William stood in the meeting room wearing an old suit that had been carefully made to look cheap. His hands shook a little as he practiced looking nervous and scared. In 3 hours, he would meet the first aliens that most humans had ever seen. But William wasn't really a diplomat. He was Colonel William Chen of Terran Intelligence. And his job was to make the Corvani believe Earth was helpless. The alien ships had arrived 2 weeks ago. 50 massive vessels that blocked out the sun when they passed overhead. They had landed at major cities around the world. Corvani soldiers had marched out wearing armor that could stop bullets and carrying weapons that could melt tanks. To most people watching on television, it looked like the end of the world. But the people watching didn't know the truth. They didn't know that Earth's real military was hidden underground and in space, waiting for orders. They didn't know that the primitive weapons failing against Corvani armor were actually holding back. They didn't know that every Corvani soldier was being watched, recorded, and studied by invisible drones, smaller than insects. William walked into the meeting room, where Commander Vrak was waiting. The alien was even bigger than the videos had. Shown 9 feet tall with black armor covering his shell-like skin, his 4 arms ended in claws that could cut through steel, and his black eyes reflected light like mirrors. "Greetings," William said in English, then repeated it in the Corvani language. He had learned to speak Corvani perfectly during the 300 years Earth had been listening to their communications, but he pretended to struggle with the words. Vrak's translator box spoke in mechanical English. "You are the representative of this planet's government?" "I represent the United Nations. Yes, we speak for most of the governments on Earth." William let his voice sound scared and uncertain. "We want to welcome you to our world." Vrak made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your world belongs to the Corvani Empire now. You will serve us, and in return we will allow your species to continue existing." William nodded quickly, as if he was grateful for such generous terms. "Of course we understand. We want to cooperate. But our governments need time, too, to adjust to the new situation." Over the following weeks, William and other fake diplomats met with Corvani commanders around the world. Each meeting was carefully planned to make the aliens believe humans were divided, confused, and completely outmatched. Some human governments agreed to serve the Corvani immediately. Others pretended to resist and were quickly defeated by alien weapons. A few tried to negotiate for better treatment and were told there would be no negotiations. The performance was perfect. Every human leader was actually following orders from the hidden Terran command, but to the Corvani, it looked like a primitive species falling apart under pressure. They saw humans arguing with each other, fighting among themselves, and slowly accepting that they had no choice but to submit. Commander Vrak established his headquarters in what used to be the United Nations building in New York. He commanded 50,000 Corvani soldiers spread across Earth, plus the crews of the 50 ships in orbit. It was a huge force, enough to conquer most planets in the galaxy. But Earth wasn't most planets. Marcus watched from his underground command center as Corvani patrols walked through major cities. The aliens thought they were in control, but every step they took was being monitored. Hidden sensors tracked their movements. Invisible drones recorded their conversations. Quantum computers analyzed their behavior and predicted their tactics. "How long do we keep this up?" Davis asked. She had been working 20-hour days for months, coordinating the vast deception. "Until they're completely comfortable," Marcus replied. "Till they think Earth is just another conquered world? Till they stop being careful? The Corvani were already getting careless. Their patrols had become routine. Their communications were unencrypted. They had stopped scanning for hidden technology because they believed humans didn't have any. The alien soldiers walked through human cities like tourists, confident that nothing could threaten them. What they didn't see were the preparations happening all around them. Construction projects that looked like they were building new roads were actually installing weapon systems. Industrial accidents at power plants were covering the deployment of fusion reactors that put power weapons beyond anything the Corvani had ever faced. Even the protests and riots that broke out in some cities were carefully planned to move alien forces exactly where Earth wanted them. The biggest deception was in space. The Corvani fleet orbited Earth in a defensive formation, watching for threats that might come from other star systems. They never imagined that the real threat was already there, hidden among what looked like space junk and abandoned satellites. Captain Lisa Rodriguez floated in the cramped cockpit of her fighter, one of 1,000 ships that had been disguised to look like debris. Her vessel was invisible to Corvani sensors, powered by a fusion reactor smaller than a refrigerator and armed with weapons that could cut through alien armor like paper. She and her fellow pilots had been waiting motionless for 3 months, breathing recycled air and eating food paste, ready to strike when the order came. "This is getting old," her wingman Tom whispered over the radio. "When do we stop pretending?" "When command says so," Lisa replied. "Remember, we get one chance at this. If we screw it up, Earth is finished." The Corvani had no idea they were surrounded. They thought the few human spaceships they could see were primitive rockets that couldn't fight a real battle. They had destroyed several of these primitive ships in demonstrations of power, not knowing they were blowing up empty shells while the real human fleet watched invisibly from a few miles away. On Earth's surface, the deception was just as complete. Corvani soldiers lived in human cities, ate human food, and even made friends with some humans who seemed especially eager to cooperate. They never suspected that every friendly human was actually a trained intelligence agent gathering information about alien technology, psychology, and tactics. William had become Commander Vrak's favorite human. The alien commander trusted him to translate orders and manage human workers. Vrak even shared meals with William, talking about Corvani history and culture, while William pretended to be fascinated. "Your species learns quickly, Vrak," said one evening, as they ate dinner in his headquarters. "Most conquered worlds take years to accept their new place in the Empire." "Humans are practical," William replied. "We know when we're beaten. There's no point in fighting an enemy we can't defeat." Vrak's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "Exactly. The Corvani Empire is patient with species that understand this truth. Your people will have good lives as our servants." William nodded and smiled, while inside he was counting down the days until Vrak learned how wrong he was. The alien commander had become so comfortable that he barely wore his armor anymore. His soldiers had started leaving their weapons in their barracks when they went on patrol. The Corvani fleet had relaxed their defensive formations and stopped running regular security scans. They thought Earth was conquered. They thought humanity was beaten. They thought they were safe. In underground bunkers around the world, human soldiers cleaned their weapons and checked their equipment. In hidden space stations, technicians armed missiles that could destroy entire fleets. In computer centers buried miles beneath the surface, artificial intelligences ran final calculations for battles that would reshape the galaxy. Earth had been patient for 300 years. It had watched and learned and prepared while alien empires fought wars across the stars. Now the Corvani had given humanity a reason to stop hiding. They had threatened Earth, enslaved its people, declared themselves the masters of the human species. That was their mistake. And soon they would learn exactly how big a mistake it was. The deception was almost complete. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it at exactly the right moment, when it would have the maximum impact not just on the Corvani, but on every species in the galaxy that might be watching. Earth had waited for a reason to reveal itself. Now it had one. And when the truth finally came out, the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The message came at exactly 6 in the morning, Greenwich time. Every human agent on Earth received the same 2 words on their hidden communicators: "Execute Prometheus." William was having breakfast with Commander Vrak when his watch vibrated. With the signal, He looked down at the tiny screen and felt his heart start racing. After 6 months of pretending to be a scared, helpless human, he was finally going to show the Corvani what Earth really was. "Is something wrong?" Rack asked. Noticing William's expression, "No, nothing at all," William replied, forcing himself to smile. "Just a message from my wife. She's worried about me working so late." Rack's mandibles clicked in what might have been sympathy. Family concerns are understandable. Corvani also value family bonds. William nodded and continued eating his breakfast, counting the minutes until the plan began. At exactly 6:15 a.m., every human on Earth would receive their individual orders. At 6:30, the real war would start. High above the planet, Captain Lisa Rodriguez floated in her hidden fighter. Among the debris field, her squadron of 50 ships had been waiting motionless for months, disguised as broken satellites and space junk. Around Earth's orbit, 1,000 more fighters waited in similar hiding spots. "All units, this is command," came the voice in her earpiece. "Prometheus is active. Begin Phase 1 in 10 minutes. Lisa's hands moved across her controls, bringing weapon systems online for the first time in 6 months. Her fusion reactor hummed to life, and targeting computers began identifying Corvani ships. The largest alien vessel was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But it was also completely undefended, floating peacefully. In orbit, with its shields down and weapons powered off, target acquired, Lisa whispered into her radio. Ready to engage. The Corvani fleet had 50 ships arranged in a loose formation around Earth. They weren't expecting trouble, who would? Be stupid enough to attack the mighty Corvani Empire? Their sensors showed only primitive human satellites and space debris. They had no idea that the debris was actually the most advanced military force in the galaxy. At exactly 6:30 a.m., Lisa fired her first shot. A beam of pure energy lanced out from her fighter and struck the Corvani flagship, the alien ship's hull, designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in known space, simply evaporated. The beam cut through the ship like a knife through paper, slicing it in half. Around the orbital battlefield, 1,000 other beams lit up the darkness. Every Corvani ship was hit simultaneously by weapons they didn't even know existed. Hulls that could resist nuclear weapons were carved apart by molecular disruptors. Shields that could stop particle beams were overwhelmed by quantum torpedoes. In less than 30 seconds, the entire Corvani fleet was either destroyed or disabled. Commander Vrack was still eating breakfast when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the damage was already done. His communication systems were dead. His orbital fleet wasn't responding, and William was no longer pretending to be afraid. "What's happening?" Vrack demanded, reaching for his weapon. "Your fleet is gone," William said calmly, standing up from the table. "All 50 ships destroyed in the first minute of the battle. Your occupation force is surrounded. You're about to learn what humans really are." Before Vrack could draw his weapon, the windows of the building exploded inward. Human soldiers rappelled down from aircraft that had appeared out of nowhere. Moving with precision that would have impressed the galaxy's best military units, they wore armor that looked like science fiction and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "Commander Vrack of the Corvani Empire," one of the soldiers announced, "you are under arrest for crimes against humanity." Vrack's forearms moved faster than human eyes could follow, but the soldiers were faster. Energy beams struck him before he could fire a shot, and his own invincible armor simply melted away. He collapsed to the floor, unconscious but alive. All over Earth, similar scenes were playing out. Corvani soldiers who had been relaxing in their barracks found themselves surrounded by humans who fought like machines. Alien weapons that could melt steel were useless against human armor that bent. Light itself. Corvani tactics that had conquered hundreds of worlds were countered by humans who had studied them for centuries. The battle lasted 6 hours, not because the Corvani were strong, but because the humans were careful. Every alien soldier was captured, alive when possible. Every piece of Corvani technology was preserved for study, and every action was recorded by cameras that would soon broadcast the truth to the entire galaxy. In the underground command center, Admiral Torres watched the tactical displays as her forces completed their mission. 300 years of preparation had paid off perfectly. The Corvani occupation force was defeated, their fleet was destroyed, and not a single human civilian had been harmed in the fighting. "Status report," she ordered. "All primary objectives completed," reported Major Kim. 57 Corvani ships destroyed, 3 captured intact. 49,000 enemy soldiers captured, 800 killed in combat. Losses are minimal, 12 fighters damaged, no personnel casualties. Torres nodded. The numbers were even better than their best-case scenarios had predicted. The Corvani had been so confident in their superiority that they hadn't even tried to fight effectively. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "Send the message, across the galaxy, every major civilization received the same transmission." It was broadcast on every communication frequency, translated into every known language, and sent to every government, military, and news organization that Earth's spy network had identified over the past 3 centuries. The message was simple and direct. "People of the galaxy, this is Earth. For 300 years, we have watched you from the shadows. We have seen your wars, your victories, and your defeats. We have studied your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. We have remained hidden because we chose to be hidden, not because we were primitive or weak. The Corvani Empire made the mistake of threatening our world and enslaving our people. This message shows you what happened to them. Their fleet is destroyed, their soldiers are captured, their invasion has failed completely. We are not conquerors. We are not interested in building an empire or ruling other species. But we will not allow anyone to threaten Earth or its people. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to live in peace. We suggest you remember that." The message was accompanied by complete recordings of the battle. Every alien government could see human technology that surpassed anything they possessed. They could watch Corvani ships, the most advanced vessels in known space, being destroyed by weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. They could see human soldiers moving with inhuman speed and precision, protected by armor that made them nearly invulnerable. But perhaps most frightening of all was the realization of how long humans had been watching. The message included detailed information about alien military capabilities, political situations, and technological developments that should have been impossible for any outsider to know. Earth had been invisible and present at the same time. Learning everything while revealing nothing, Marcus stood in his command center, watching as alien news networks began broadcasting the story. The Thaulan Empire had recalled all military forces from the borders of human space. The Rilla Confederacy was sending diplomatic messages asking for trade agreements. The Galactic Federation was offering Earth's immediate membership with full voting rights. Sir Davis said, "We're getting surrender messages from Corvani forces throughout the galaxy. They're asking for terms." "I tell them the terms are simple," Marcus replied. "They will release all slaves, end all military expansion, and submit to galactic oversight. In return, they will be allowed to continue existing." It was a generous offer for a completely defeated enemy. But Earth had made its point. The demonstration of power was complete. The galaxy now knew that humans were not primitive, not weak, definitely not helpless. The revelation was spreading faster than light itself. Carried by the same communication networks that Earth had been secretly monitoring for centuries. Every species in the galaxy was learning the same lesson. The quiet planet in the corner of the galaxy was actually the most dangerous civilization any of them had ever encountered. Earth had waited for a reason to reveal itself. The Corvani had provided that reason. And now the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Corvani defeat, the galaxy looked very different. President Martinez stood at the podium in the newly built Earth Embassy on the neutral world of Haven, preparing to address representatives from over 200 alien civilizations. Behind her, the flag of Earth hung next to the symbols of dozens of other species, many of whom had never spoken to each other before this day. The room was filled with creatures that most humans had only seen in secret surveillance files. There were the bird-like Altarians, with their golden feathers and musical voices, the crystalline Vexani, whose bodies sparkled like living gemstones, the massive Gorvin, who looked like walking trees with too many arms, and hundreds of others, all gathered to hear what Earth had to say. 6 months ago, most of you learned that Earth existed, Martinez began. Her words translated instantly into dozens of languages. Today, I want to tell you what Earth intends to do with that knowledge. The audience was completely silent. Every species represented in that room had spent the past month studying the recordings of the Corvani defeat, trying to understand how a single planet had developed technology so far beyond anything else in the galaxy. Some had concluded that humans must be an ancient race that had been hiding their true nature. Others believed Earth had discovered alien technology and learned to use it. Few even thought humans might be from another galaxy entirely. None of them had guessed the simple truth that humanity had achieved its technological superiority. Through 3 centuries of patient observation and careful preparation, Earth has no interest in conquest, Martinez continued. We have no desire to rule other species or build an empire. What we do have is a commitment to peace and stability in the galaxy. The age of casual conquest and enslavement is over. The weeks following the Corvani defeat, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The Thulan Empire, which had been preparing to invade neutral systems, suddenly found itself reconsidering its expansionist policies. Began negotiating with species they had previously planned to conquer. Even the smaller empires that had been fighting border wars for decades agreed to cease fires and peace talks. Nobody wanted to be the next example of what happened when you threaten the wrong species. Marcus, now promoted to Director of Galactic Affairs, sat in his new office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The room was very different from his old underground command center. Sunlight streamed through large windows, and he could see ships from dozens of different species landing at the new interstellar port being built offshore. His job had changed completely. Instead of watching alien civilizations from hiding, he was now helping Earth interact with them openly. Trade agreements, diplomatic treaties, defense pacts, cultural exchanges, all the things humanity had avoided for 3 centuries were now happening at an incredible pace. Sir Davis said, entering the office with a stack of reports. We have updates from the monitoring stations. Even though Earth was no longer hiding, the surveillance network remained active. Old habits were hard to break, and the galaxy was still full of potential threats. But now the network served a different purpose, keeping peace instead of gathering intelligence for war. The Corvani survivors have established a new government, Davis reported. They're calling it the Corvani Republic, and they've formally renounced all territorial claims outside their original 12 worlds. They're also asking if they can send an ambassador to Earth. Marcus smiled. 6 months ago, the Corvani had been the most feared empire in the galaxy. Now they were a small republic trying to rebuild their reputation by making friends with the species that had defeated them. Tell them yes, he said, but make it clear that any ambassador will be watched very carefully. The transformation of the Corvani had been the most dramatic change in the galaxy. When word of their defeat had spread, rebellion had erupted on every world they controlled. Slave populations rose up against their masters. Subject species declared independence. The Corvani military, learning that their most advanced ships were useless against human technology, had simply given up rather than fight a war they couldn't win. Within 3 months, the Corvani Empire had collapsed completely. The former ruling class had been forced to accept a new government that promised equality for all species and an end to the practice of slavery. It was the first time in galactic history that an empire had been destroyed, not by military conquest, but by the simple demonstration that it could be destroyed. Admiral Torres walked through the corridors of Deep Station 7, which was no longer hidden in the asteroid belt. The station had been moved to Earth orbit and expanded into a massive complex that served as humanity's military headquarters. Ships from Earth's new allies docked alongside human vessels, and officers from dozens of species worked together in the command centers. Admiral called Captain Rodriguez, who had led the fighter attack against the Corvani fleet. The new defense grid is ready for testing. Torres nodded and followed Rodriguez to the main tactical display around Earth's solar system. A network of defense platforms had been built using technology shared with humanity's allies. The platforms were operated jointly by Earth and the Galactic Federation, serving as both a defensive system and a symbol of cooperation. "Run the test," Torres ordered. The platforms activated in sequence, their weapon systems targeting empty. A space where enemy ships might appear. Energy beams that could slice through any known armor fired harmlessly into the void. While force fields strong enough to stop entire fleets flickered to life between the planets, the display was impressive. But Torres knew it was mostly for show. Earth's real defenses were still hidden, still secret, still far beyond what any potential enemy could match. The galaxy thought it had seen humanity's full capabilities during the Corvani defeat. They had no idea how much more Earth was keeping. In reserve, that was intentional. Peace was easier to maintain when potential troublemakers weren't sure exactly how much trouble they would be in. General Hayes, now serving as Earth's defense minister, sat in a meeting with representatives from AG's, the Galactic Federation. The discussion was about the Neutral Zone Patrol, a joint peacekeeping force that would monitor disputed areas and prevent wars before they started. Earth will contribute 50 ships and 5,000 personnel, Hayes announced. But we want. It understood that our people will operate under Earth's rules of engagement. The alien representatives nodded quickly. Everyone knew what Earth's rules of engagement meant: overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The Corvani had learned that lesson the hard way. The Neutral Zone Patrol was just one of many new organizations that had formed since Earth's revelation. The Galactic Trade Council regulated commerce between species. The Interstellar Mediation Service helped resolve disputes without warfare. The Scientific Cooperation Initiative shared research and technology for peaceful purposes. All of these organizations existed because Earth had changed the fundamental nature of galactic politics. Before, the strongest species had ruled through fear and violence. Now, cooperation was more profitable than conquest, and peace was safer than war. Not everyone was happy with the new order. Some species complained that Earth had too much influence. For a single planet, others worried that humanity's hidden nature made them untrustworthy partners. A few military leaders from various empires grumbled that the galaxy had become soft and weak, but none of them were willing to do anything about it. The recordings of the Corvani defeat were still fresh in everyone's memory. Earth had demonstrated its power once. Nobody wanted to give them a reason to demonstrate it again. William, no longer pretending to be a nervous diplomat, stood on the observation deck of the new Earth Embassy on Haven. Below him, delegates from hundreds of worlds were arriving for the first Galactic Peace Conference. Ships of every design filled the sky, sleek Altarian cruisers, massive Gorvan haulers, elegant Vexani crystal ships, and dozens of others. But scattered among the alien vessels were ships from Earth, their hulls black and angular, their technology still mysterious to most observers. They were a reminder that humanity was watching, always watching, ready to act if peace failed. The galaxy had learned to fear Earth's military power. But more importantly, they had learned to respect Earth's commitment to peace. Humanity had the strength to conquer anyone, but instead chose to protect everyone. That combination of power and restraint had earned Earth something more valuable than fear. It had earned trust. Marcus stood at his window, watching the sunset over the Pacific. In the distance, he could see the lights of ships taking off and landing at the interstellar port. 6 months ago, those had been enemy vessels approaching Earth to conquer it. Now they were friends coming to trade, negotiate, and cooperate. The plan had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Earth had revealed itself not as a conquering empire, but as a protector of peace. The galaxy was more stable, more cooperative, and more peaceful than it had been in centuries. But Marcus knew that the watching never stopped. Out in the darkness between stars, Earth's sensors still monitored every ship, every signal, every movement. The galaxy was at peace, but peace was fragile. It required constant attention and occasional reminders of what happened to those who threatened it. Earth had waited for a reason to reveal itself. When that reason came, humanity had not just defeated its enemies, it had changed the nature of galactic civilization itself. The age of empires built on conquest was over. The age of cooperation built on mutual respect had begun. And at the center of it all was Earth, no longer hidden, but still watching, still learning, still ready to act when the galaxy needed protection. Humanity had shown that the greatest strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to know. When that power should be used, the stars were peaceful tonight. Earth intended to keep them that way.